Welcome into a brand new edition of the 06010 ESPN Communications Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Fuse, and we have a very special guest for you today, the one and only Christopher Mad Dog Russo. I can't open the show, Chris, like you usually do. You bring the energy every single time you're on First Take every single Wednesday with Stephen A. and Molly and the crew. Walk us through what has this been like for you since you've joined ESPN?
Oh, it's been a tremendous breakthrough. Let's be honest, Alex, a little renaissance. I was 62, whatever it may have been, years of age. I had done the radio. I had the baseball show over there on MLB Network. And then all of a sudden, with Clemens and Bonds with the Hall of Fame candidacy, Stephen A. tracked me down on a January day. I came in. It was right after the Niners beat Green Bay on Lambeau Field. When Rodgers had that bad loss. So his last playoff game he ever played in Lambeau, the year they were 14-3, so 3 years ago. And I never thought that would have the kind of impact, at least from a social network standpoint, because obviously everybody follows the First Take on the on social media. So from that standpoint, I got a huge break there. And people who had not seen me or heard me in the last, whatever it may have been, 30 some odd years doing terrestrial radio and, the linear media stuff. They saw me here on First Take, and they put the clips out in the PR machine that ESPN is. And so as a result of that, I've been very, very lucky. So the break of a lifetime at the age of 62, 63.
I've been meaning to ask you this. You said at the height of Mike and the Mad Dog, you credited some of that success to you going on David Letterman. Do you see
Right.
success now with you going on First Take?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The Letterman thing was a little different. It was sort of a niche audience, and it necessarily wasn't always about sports. This is a perfect feeder into radio shows and to the baseball shows. And just as from a sports perspective, and I don't read the social media stuff too much. They send me the clips, so I look at it. I'm not silly. But the Jimmy Trainers of the world, you guys do a great job. It has had a huge impact in my career. I mean, and I didn't think I was going to have any kind of impact like this at the age of 62, 63 years of age. And ESPN's been very good to me. They let me say what I want to say. They don't get too mad when I get a little crazy. The Jason Kelsey thing a couple weeks ago is a perfect example of that, when I was kind of having fun with the Jason Kelsey and an Eagle game against Atlanta. So they've been very, very good to me, and been very fortunate. Right place, right time. I think that is the key to anybody who is successful in this line of work: communications, TV, movies. You got to be put in the right role at the right time. And for whatever the reason, the role for me at the tail end of my career has been very significant, very important.
We'll get into your career a little bit later on. You've known Stephen A. for a long time, but what have you learned most from him since you've been working together with him?
He's a tremendous communicator, and he is a tremendous. I don't want to say actors. That's not fair, but he is an absolutely tremendous. He's a personality. He knows how to sell his personality. He's almost like he's a Broadway actor. He knows how to play the part. He knows how to get people riled up. He knows how to make people around him shine. He never has a problem with what you do as a co-host or as a participant on his show. And it is his show. Remember, this is his show. First Take is his show. And he lets you shine and do your thing. I mean, he's an entertainer. I mean, he is the perfect modern day entertainer in 2023, 24. And he has perfected it to a scenario where, you can't, not everybody's going to agree with him. He's on there 10 hours a week, so he's going to make a mistake or two. He doesn't take those too seriously, but he makes a mistake, and everybody likes to get on him. He handles it. He lets it roll off his back. I mean, he's got all the attributes that you're looking for in 2024 America with media, especially sports media. And he loves to play the game. He's tireless. I mean, the guy does everything. He can go from politics to sports to anything he wants. He can do a million interviews. He knows how he can do Howard Stern to Sean Hannity and, back to back, off doing 2 hours of First Take. I can't tell you how impressed I am with his energy level. He works, and he loves selling that book of his. I mean, I can't tell you enough about how impressed I am with what he does here in media. Does a tremendous job.
Chris, my favorite segment of the week is the What Are You Mad About segment. Walk us through, how do you choose what topics you are going to be mad about Walk us through that process.
Well, the first thing I try to do is come up with things that the panel sitting behind me is going to get into. So, I mean, for me to bring up something that, a cricket match, breaking down that, or, a tennis match, breaking down a breaks point or a match result, that may not resonate with the people that whether it's Jeff, whether it's Marcus, Kimberly, obviously Stephen A. So you have to come up with something that they're going to identify with. That's number one. Number two, you always got to try to put an NFL football thing in there. And I try to put college in there too. I try to do a couple of football every week, and then I come up with a third one. And number three, I haven't done it recently because when the fall comes, you have a lot more content. You try to come up with something that is personal, because people identify with authenticity. And if they see you mad about something that involves you personally, whether it's a bet, whether it's a tennis match, whether it's traveling, whether it's getting on Delta Airlines and being cramped in first class, which I did a couple years ago coming back from a Caribbean island, if you can do that, people identify with that. People bringing tons of food and coffee on planes and how jammed they are and all the disaster that is. So if I can do that, that goes a long way. So I try to come up with things, at least one that the audience can identify with, do a couple of football, and make sure that the panel behind me will have an opinion, because I'm going to go to them to ask them what they think. So as a result, if I can go to them on things that they also are aware of, I'll get a better reaction. Reaction's very important there, Alex. You want whoever they may be, and three of them are sitting there and pray. You don't want them looking at you. They don't know how to handle it or what to say, because it's a sport they don't may not. So me giving a hockey one in the middle of October, I'm not going to get any response. So I try to come up with things that's going to generate a response from the panel. I think that's the number one concern. And if I'm passionate, if I'm into it, I'll be able to sell it. Remember, if I'm passionate about the subject matter or they're mad about a particular segment, that will go a long way of carrying the segment on the television. So I have to be passionate. Me fighting to the camera, me mad about something, that goes a long way too.
What part or what topic do you think got the most response since you've been doing this?
That's a good one. The Delta Airlines one was good when I boarded the plane and it was jammed and it took forever. And airplane travel is good because they all identify with the airplane travel. And everybody knows what a disaster it is, how hard it is, gates, how they pack the planes. You got to carry 9 bags on it because you get charged. They don't serve you any food, so people bring their food on. So that, to me, that is one that everybody really identifies with. The gummies, too. Now, I don't necessarily do that in the Mad About segment. Sometimes I just throw that on there anyway. But people relate to that. It's amazing the amount of people related to me talking about taking a gummy and betting all the football, and my wife was away on vacation. When I did that last year, my Mrs. Russo wasn't happy. But as far as the scenario with the gummies, they love it. So if you can do things that is relatable to the audience, me breaking down Teafo getting mad in a tennis match, or that's not, or Sinner with steroids, that is not relatable to half the audience. But if you can do something that they can identify with, that goes a long way too. So I try to come up with things. Aaron Rodgers doing his handicap, screwing around with his handicap a couple years ago when I screamed about that in Phoenix when he won the AT&T Challenge, and he said he was a 12 and he was really a 7. So he's getting more strokes, which enabled him to win the Pro-Am of that. People got into that. It's Rodgers. It's fudging their handicap. It's competition. So those kinds of things carry a lot of weight and go a long way.
Out of the Thanksgiving one and the Rockefeller Christmas tree.
Oh, the Thanksgiving one, too. That's a good one. The idea that I hate Thanksgiving and all the family get together, they can identify with that. The Rockefeller Christmas tree lighting when I couldn't get back to my train in time because I got crossed. They like that. And, I don't mind making fun of myself. And so if people think that I'm an old man ogre who's old man yelling at people getting on his front lawn, which is I have that reputation, I'm okay with it, because the idea here is to provide a little levity in an 8 or a 9 minute segment. And if I can use myself to do that, I'm accomplishing the goal. Plus the fact I'm taking some pressure off Stephen A. He's got to do this 10 hours a week, and I can take 8-9 minutes of pressure away from him on a Wednesday. It makes his day a little easier. I'm thinking about that too.
Chris, your ESPN Bet commercials have been a wild success too. How fun was that for you, number one, to record those with the crew? And what have you heard as a response to those?
Oh, people love the commercials, the both of them, because you got the Stephen A. when he walks into the deli, and then you had me getting on Stephen A. because his billboard was on the top of the taxi cab. Sat there a long time to do them. It was 5.5 hours to do a couple of lines. I was amazed at how about all the details and how intricate it is and how perfect it's got to be. And, you're doing through what you would think would be a very casual scene 15, 20 times to get it exactly right, to give the director and the producers a lots to choose from. I thought Greenberg was so good in the one I did with Molly, because the way he reacts to Molly, talking about Molly's matchups. And then he says to me, I get it, but I couldn't, when we were doing a commercial, I couldn't stop laughing. I says, Mike, you're making me laugh with, I get it. It's funny the way he did it. But, I give ESPN credit because they made the commercial a lot of us reacting to Stephen A. having all the accolades at ESPN, and then they made him have to react to me getting a picture up at the deli. So they did a good job of having us go up against each other. So that was a very, very, I learned something. The amount of people it takes to do a commercial, all the people there on the set. I mean, again, the actors, they had people in the background walk behind the cab. And they were actors just doing a walk. They had to walk back and forth 9 million times to get the shot right. Very interested to learn about the details that it takes just to do a 30-second commercial. You wouldn't think it'd be that big a deal. It is a big deal. It was hard.
Before we get to a fast 5-round question, I got to ask, you're fresh off hosting First Take for the first time. Obviously, you've hosted a radio show for over 30 years. How different is it for you to host?
Hard. It's hard. It's hard, and I wasn't fine. I wasn't perfect with it today. Molly does a great job with it. Unheralded did a super job, but then I got to also get my opinions in. Most of the time, the host doesn't do that. So I have to think about what they're saying and come up with my own opinion. But it's tricky getting all the bumps in and the promos in. But I enjoyed it. It was something different. It's a unique, it's harder. It's definitely harder. But I think what made it work today, it was goofy. If I was too good, if I was too fine and too smooth, it wouldn't have felt real. One time I said today, back on High Heat right after this, and High Heat's the baseball show. So I think that adds to the realism of the show. Again, the key to being successful is be realistic, is be true to yourself. That's the key to the whole thing.
Did he do that on purpose or by accident?
No, by accident. By accident. That was totally by accident. When you do it on purpose, it's choreographed. So you try not to do it on purpose. It comes off better when it's an accident. And I tell you, who texted me during the show today?
Who's that?
Stevie Van Zandt. Syl from The Sopranos.
Wow.
Bruce's number one man for, 30 years. Loved it. And he watches First Take every week and every day. He loves First Take. And the fact that I got Stevie Van Zandt texting me at 10:30 in the morning, I thought that was interesting too. So that was good.
Yeah, I love the intro with the Mike and the Mad Dog collage.
Yeah, that was a good idea. Very good. Yes.
A few years ago. But I was a little surprised there was no Bruce coming in and out of break. But
good point. Very good point.
But this is the Fuse Box Fast 5 round. It's 5 quick questions. And are you ready?
I am. Alex, throw it at me here. Go ahead.
One biggest pet peeve.
My biggest pet peeve about what? Anything specific?
Anything.
My biggest pet peeve about anything specific. That's a good question. I would say broadcasters or analysts talking too much during the games they televise, whether it's football or baseball. Let the game breathe. If I'm watching your game, whether it's the NFL, the NBA, whatever the major sport is, let a tennis, you name it. I'm wrapped up in the game. Let me absorb it all. You don't have to talk after every single point or play or pitch. Let the game settle in a little bit. I don't need every pitch analyzed. I don't need every 2-yard run up the middle by a fullback analyzed. I don't need every layup analyzed in a fourth quarter of a blowout. Let the game breathe and settle in. I think that's a big pet peeve I have. I think analysts and play-by-play guys think they're paid by the minute. The great ones know when to lay out and not say much and let the game speak for itself. And there's too much chatter in games. That's a good pet peeve.
I don't know about this question. I'll gauge your reaction to it. If you could decide, all right, I'm going to settle with a sports debate loss on this topic, who would you rather lose to? Stephen A. Smith or Mike Francesa?
That's a good one. Mike and I were very competitive with these debates, and so we had to win. Stephen A., it's got a little more fun to it. It's not as edgy. Mike and I were edgy at times. We had a big fight once over the bathrooms, which ones were better, the Fenway or at Yankee Stadium, about new ballparks. I mean, that gets to be ridiculous, but there was an edge to it. Stephen A. and I, there's no edge. So I would say the Stephen A. debates with me and who's right, who's wrong, I'm more wrapped up in the entertainment aspect of it. In the radio version with Mike, I'm wrapped up in winning, and I think that can be a negative. So I'll say I enjoy the debates. I enjoy both of them, but the edginess can get to you with the radio, so I'll take the TV.
Who's the one person you've always wanted to interview, either passed on or still with us?
Well, I'll give you a couple. Nick Saban is one. I can never get Nick Saban on. I mean, I love Nick Saban. I love his history, Kent State, all the great things that Saban did, and I have not been able to get him on. So that would be one that I would give you right out of the gate. I love Belichick too. I don't know if I have interviewed him. I haven't interviewed him since he's become Vince Lombardi. So I would say that would be one that I would like to talk to. And I don't mean talk to you for 6 minutes. I mean to talk about his career, his life. I would enjoy that to get the most out of him. That would be two. Let me give you so that's a football. There's a two football. I guess if I gave you a baseball manager, who would I like to talk to who's had a great career as a baseball manager? Now, most of baseball I've had a chance to talk to because they've been on the TV. I'll give you an NBA. Again, sitting and talking to, I've talked to Jordan and I've talked to Bird and I've had Magic. So I guess LeBron. Never had LeBron on. So I wouldn't mind having a chance to talk to LeBron where, all things are on the table, but a friendly interview where I can learn about LeBron basketball-wise, bring up a couple things that are negatives and see what he responds. Those are big names, and you're not going to get those guys, but LeBron, Nick, and Bill. How's that?
Very good. 20 years from now, when you decide to hang it up, what do you want to be remembered for most in sports media?
Wow. Well, I think the key to any successful person is longevity. If you can do it for a long period of time and do it and be good at it and do it well, I think that would be the thing that I would be, because that means you're adaptable. That means that you can, remember I started in the early 80s. The world was a totally different place in the early 80s. And then it moves into, post-pandemic and everything else. So the idea that I've been able to be good at this in all forms of media, I wrote a couple books. I was fortunate, the radio, the TV, specialized shows with doing Letterman. I did 37 appearances with Letterman. I'm proud of that. I think the idea that I've been able to do all sorts of media, the radio, even book, and now TV at a higher level, not a higher level, but, I'm talking about, ESPN's a high level, Letterman's a high level, and doing that really since 1983 and be somewhat successful at it. I think the fact that it's now 2024, so we're talking about 41 years. Going into you're working on you're over your fourth decade. And, I've had my problems, but I've been relatively successful and the audience still wants to hear what I have to say. I think that's what I'm most proud about. It's one thing to be good for a short period of time. One thing, athletes, it's different because they get hurt, they get injured, things change, coaches change. In the TV and radio and the media industry, if you're good for that long a period of time, you obviously got something going on. Longevity is significant. So I would say that.
And then the last one for you, Chris, what's one thing you haven't accomplished yet going off of that you would like to?
One thing that I have not accomplished yet. You talk about in the media business, huh?
Or in life?
Or in life. Yeah. Let's see. What's the one thing that I have not done yet? Well, the life is easy, travel and everything. I like to see, I'll give you a couple. I haven't been to Wimbledon yet.
Hmm.
I went to the Masters last year for the first time. I have not been to Wimbledon. That's something that I like to be. I like to go to Ohio State to see a football game. I haven't been to one of those yet. I wouldn't mind going to an Alabama Auburn game in Auburn. I haven't been there yet. Um, Wimbledon is an easy one. I like to go to the French Open for tennis. I have not been there yet. I've been to Super Bowls, been to Lambeau, been to Notre Dame. I've been to Fenway, I've been to Wrigley, Yankee Stadium, Dodger Stadium. I tell you, I wouldn't mind going to a Canadian game in Montreal because I've never been to Montreal. So from a sports perspective, I'll tell you one thing I've thought about doing is make a Canadian trip in hockey and go to Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa, Winnipeg, Calgary, Edmonton, and Vancouver and see a game in each spot. No, I thought that sounds wacky. Boy, really? Why would you want to do that? But those 7 I would like to do. So you try to pick the spots that are a little different. Wimbledon is something, French Open. I got the Masters done. Obviously, a couple college football venues that you'd like to see. I've been to the Rose Bowl, so I don't have to see that necessarily, but I like to go see Alabama play at Auburn. That's interesting. I like to see Michigan play Ohio State in Columbus, which I have never done before. NFL football. I've been to Lambeau. What other iconic stadiums did you like to see? I've been to a lot of the football stadiums, and I've been to the Super Bowls. A rivalry thing. Green Bay is important. I have been to Lambeau more than one occasion. That is very significant. The college football, some tennis, and some hockey. And, there'll be a couple. I know Final Four. I tell you, I like to go see a game at Duke.
Hmm.
I've been to the arena, but I've never been for a game. So I like to see a North Carolina Duke game at Duke because, college basketball. So there's those big events with the rivals and, we all know Carolina and Duke, what it means to people in that state, those kinds of things that I need to do, which I have not yet done in certain scenarios.
No, great stuff there. And I really appreciate your time today to do this. This was so much fun. So thanks again for coming on the podcast today.
Alex, you do a wonderful job. Anytime I can help you, you let me know. Appreciate some help here today. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
You got it.